For about 60 years, John Givens has been a critical part of the fabric of the Peninsula Symphony. He's played in the orchestra for all of those 60 years brilliantly. He served as our principal bassoon for more than a half century. He's been an extremely active and capable board member for many of those years. He was interim executive director for a critical period of time. And all the while, he's been a project manager for NASA and active in his community in many ways. And now tonight, he is front and center as sponsor of tonight's live stream. Thank you, John Givens, from the bottom of our hearts. Welcome to Peninsula Symphony All-Stars at Home. Our All-Star today is Greg Chambers. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you so much for having me, Mitch.
It's a pleasure to see you, to connect with the other part of the family that I see on Zooms all the time, but none of us have seen each other in person for a long time. At any rate, Greg Chambers, jazz sax soloist, star, recording artist, classical jazz performer, conductor, high school band conductor in Morgan Hill. Greg wears many musical hats, and we're going to explore all of those today. And I should also mention that Greg Chambers is married to Chelsea Chambers, the operations manager of the Peninsula Symphony and father of Owen Chambers, who we get to see periodically, a wonderful young man. And so we're going to explore lots of facets of Greg Chambers' musical life, especially in the last very strange and isolated year. So we're going to start with a very recent smooth jazz recording that Greg made called A New Day. What would you like to tell us about A New Day, Greg?
Well, so this is a project that I did a couple of years ago. Actually, the album I kind of dedicated to the birth of Owen, so I figured it was very much of a very self-reflective album. And New Day, of course, becoming a father. And of course, you and I both know that Owen's the real star.
Always.
But, yeah, so this is very much dedicated to Owen. And kind of a new beginning for us and our family.
Terrific. All right, let's watch A New Day with Greg Chambers. A New Day, that's a terrific number. Tell us about how you recorded that. Where were you? Where do the other sounds come from? Well, how do you put all that together?
That's a great question. So a lot of what I do in this space here. So I have an audio interface that I use, and I do a lot of my own tracks here. Now, a lot of times I co-write with other people who live in all over the country, really. That particular piece was written with a friend of mine who lives in Southern California, and he is a phenomenal guitar player, also a great keyboard player. So
And his
he did.
name is?
Oh, and his name is Matt Godina. He's a very talented individual. So a lot of times, like, I'll get something started. I'll send him, a sketch melody and some chord progressions that kind of might go with it. And we kind of go back and forth. And sometimes he'll program drums. Sometimes I program drums. A lot of times he'll do a lot of the redo all the keyboard work and the guitar work, of course. I usually don't send anything with guitar. Um,
So, when was this done?
so this that was written probably in 2017, I would imagine. I don't remember, exactly, but um,
And when was it recorded? When was this, what we just saw, recorded?
probably right around the beginning of 2018. So I know the album came out in June. I want to say June of 2018.
So,
Um,
in a way, you were doing COVID era stuff. That is, combining musically with people out of town, not only isolated by the pandemic, but in this case, even before all of that. And it sounds like that suggests that you had a lot of um, experience with working across different platforms going back even before this.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's very rare that actually I was in a lot of the recording sessions for some of these players. A lot of it were musicians recording at home where they'd rent out a studio that they had a connection with. We would bounce files back and forth and communicate. And in fact, I'm working with a new producer on some new work, and there's a really cool plugin that had never used before, where it allowed him to hear. I could put it on my master bus, which is kind of the final audio as I'm working in a session, and he could hear it in real time. There's a little bit of latency, but he could hear, what I was recording and how it would fit with the track, which was really, really incredible.
The youth orchestra, Peninsula Youth Orchestra, is experimenting with a piece of hardware called Jack Trip that you probably have heard a little bit about. And that reduces the latency. And I think you're going to be able to do sessions with Jack Trip that are in real time. And in the pandemic era, that's a breakthrough. It's
Yeah,
just,
I agree.
pretty much cutting edge technology at this point, but it's getting better and better. I want to ask you to roll back in time a bit and tell us about how you got started on the sax, how you got started as a musician, some of your training, and I want to go back and listen to something that you recorded in at UCLA. So, tell us about how you got started. What was your first experience with wanting to play an instrument?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up here in the Bay Area. My parents were musicians. In fact, my dad was Chelsea's first clarinet teacher, and all throughout college, or I'm sorry, all throughout high school, not college. I started out kind of playing in local groups. I played in bands, the school band, of course.
Was it
But
always sax as your first instrument?
it was so my dad was a clarinet and a saxophone player. And there's a story that he never kind of lets me live down, which was all my friends, initially wanted to play saxophone, which is why I, of course, wanted to play it too. And then a lot of them switched. They switched to clarinet, and my dad had already kind of bought the saxophone, So he grabbed his old clarinet, slapped a really hard reed on there. Of course, I couldn't make a sound. So that's kind of how I ended up sticking with saxophone.
So did you studied with him?
No, I did not. I think that it was very tough to study with your father.
Okay, so we have parallel stories here because my dad was a cellist and I started off on the cello, and it's hard studying with your own father on the instrument that he is masterful at.
Right, and especially at the middle school level, I was very strong-headed, I think. So when I got to high school, I studied with the teacher who was at San Jose State, who my parents both went to San Jose State.
Mm-hmm.
He was a wonderful saxophone teacher, Bill Trimble.
Oh, and yes, I knew Bill Trimble very, very well. He was a great saxophonist. I
Very
conducted San Jose
inspiring.
Symphony many times with him in the sax, well, as the sax principal player.
Yeah.
In fact, we talked earlier about the Rachmaninoff symphonic dances and hearing him play that. I thought he was just about the best sax, especially classical sax player I ever heard.
He was, and he had a wonderful tone. Just his approach was very inspiring. So I was very fortunate to be able to study with him in high school, and know that I was getting great instruction.
Yeah, he was a great man and
He
a great
was.
sax player. So you wound up going to UCLA,
Mhm.
and what was your experience of studying in the music department there?
I loved it. My teacher down there was Doug Masick, who was, the player who LA Phil would call for all of the first call saxophone work. He was a wonderful musician, really great doubler too. So, I kind of definitely found my path in classical saxophone, throughout college. I stayed there to do my master's, um, and then had some wonderful opportunities open up to me, kind of about the time that I graduated and with my undergrad.
So were
And
you thinking of yourself as a classical sax player, a jazz sax player at that point? Which
I
one,
think
or both?
I think both. I was always really passionate about smooth jazz, and I was probably the only teenager in the area that was. But my a friend of mine turned me on to some really hip music. Right around the year 2000, and I was still in high school at the time, and I started going to concerts. They had big jazz festivals like at the Concord Pavilion, and there were productions happening at the time, throughout Monterey. So there were things that I could go to that were really pretty local, of just some really great players, and it was definitely something that I knew that I wanted to do. But I, of course, still loved classical saxophone too. So I kind of just figured that the classical playing would kind of enhance me as a player, so that I could kind
Yeah.
of eventually um, do smooth jazz. I don't know if I saw myself only doing that, but that's kind of where I feel like I've kind of wound up.
Well, let's hear a little bit of the Paul Creston Sonata for sax and piano, which was from your undergraduate recital.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's hear a little bit of that just so we get to hear what and then we have another one coming in a moment too. So let's hear a little bit of the Paul Creston from your graduate recital at UCLA. Paul Creston, saxophone and piano sonata. terrific performance of the Creston. And of course, in the 20th century, the sax becomes a pretty significant classical solo instrument, not only in the US, but in France, in Russia. There's the Glazunov Concerto, gorgeous, wonderful piece. But even in the 19th century, when the sax was invented in the early middle part of the 19th century, composers started to really enjoy it as an orchestral instrument. And I know that you've played lots of orchestral sax. And maybe the all-time favorite of these, well, one of the two or three at any rate, is the Old Castle from Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. In the Ravel transcription, so this is actually not Mussorgsky choosing. I mean, it was a piano piece, and then it was orchestrated. By the way, the Ravel orchestration, which is the one that we're used to hearing, is one of only about 22 different full orchestrations of Pictures at an Exhibition, but it's the one that we love. So we have you playing, and where was this performance?
This was at Aspen, the music festival. So I was the saxophonist for a couple of years.
Aspen is one of the great, most intense, lots of New Yorkers at Aspen Music Festival, and they have several great orchestras. The top orchestra is really a national caliber orchestra, and it's great that you had the chance to play this.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience. Yeah, and the nice thing, so the first year that I participated, the theme was Blue Notes, so I was playing 3 or 4 concerts a week with every orchestra. And it was such a great experience for me to just have to put something together just on a rehearsal or 2 rehearsals, because sometimes even the rehearsals conflicted. And if I was, playing on multiple sets, it was definitely a challenge, but it was very, very much something to help me grow, which was really wonderful.
So let's hear the Old Castle, Mussorgsky and Ravel, Aspen Festival Orchestra, and here's Greg Chambers playing the big, gorgeous Old Castle saxophone solo.
we can stop there, I guess.
Sure. That was terrific. So that was the Old Castle, and that was Greg playing that gorgeous solo. When you're sitting in an orchestra and you're about to play a big sax solo like that, are you thinking in terms of a different technique? Is there a different vibrato, a different sound color that you're looking for when you're playing a classical excerpt like that?
Yes, for sure. um, Kind of along with the idea of the wearing two hats, I use two very different mouthpieces as
Mhm.
well. So for like all of my saxophone classical playing, I always feel really comfortable on a Selmer C star, which is a hard rubber mouthpiece with a very closed tip opening. And so yeah, it's very much a very dark sound that can kind of blend with other musicians.
Mhm.
And then when you do the jazz stuff, a lot of times if you're playing in like a big band or even a combo, or the smooth jazz or contemporary jazz stuff, whatever you want to call it, that I do, um, very much I go for a very kind of crisp, more um, something that's going to kind of cut through and be heard, especially if you're playing with a big band. You've got like drums right behind
Yeah,
you in a trumpet
right.
section. You definitely need something with a lot more projection. So it's very much a different concept.
Yeah, and being adept at many different styles of playing. In a sax section, you're thinking more about blending with the section. In an orchestral setting, using different mouthpiece and a whole different kind of sound color. And then as a smooth jazz soloist, you're looking for a much more individual sound and maybe a little edgier sound. So yeah, you have to have a lot of different technical capacities at your fingertips or your lips in your embouchure. But Greg Chambers is also an active person in a completely different life. Greg is the band director at Sobrato High School in Morgan Hill, and as a band director, which you've been doing for quite a number of years now, I'll bet this last year has been quite a shock and quite a change. How's it been being band director in a high school this last year?
It is entirely different. It's a very different experience, and I'm sure every music educator, I'm sure, would feel the same way. Um, the challenge of, a lot of times we pick repertoire that fits our ensemble, and we kind of know kind of what our lessons are going to be, kind of tailored to the repertoire, like where the strengths are, where the weaknesses might be, and this is different. We can't rehearse in a live fashion over Zoom, and so we've all kind of had to find very different things that we do with our students. Some of the things I've done with my high school this year are like I bring in we there is a, California standard of careers in music and exploring those. So I've been hitting that standard much more heavily than I normally would,
Yeah.
and I've been bringing in guest artists to talk about their path. Everyone from brought in a film composer friend of mine who worked on some major motion pictures, a guitar player who I've collaborated with on some of my projects, and he makes his living as a producer and a recording artist himself. In fact, he was Billboard #1
Mm.
uh, artist for the jazz genre in 2020. So, I've just really been trying to put lots of different people in front of my students just so they can see how many career paths there are. Because I think, also in high school, a lot of the kids, we push math and science and some of the core classes just so heavily, um, that it's nice for them to know that there's career paths in the arts as well.
Yeah. And
Uh,
still, you want to have them have the experience of seeing and hearing themselves in a performance. And you managed to do this one of Pirates that we're about to see and hear. Actually, why don't we play that?
sure.
Here's Sobrato High School marching band or full band. Which group is this?
Yes, this is the marching band. And so we had a virtual season this past year, and all these kids recorded their parts at home. I sent them, click tracks to record with. And then we dumped all the tracks into a project and kind of mixed it, and this is what we get.
Let's take a look. Sobrato High School Marching Band, Pirates. Oh, that's terrific. The kids did a wonderful job with that. You must be very, and they must be very proud of that video.
I hope that they are. I believe they are. Uh,
They
it's a
certainly
lot of
should
work.
be.
Yes, they, just to try to rehearse, a lot of ensemble parts. We did a lot where we break it into small groups, and of course, we only ended up recording a portion of the show. But with that, we also, touched on other, marching technique as well, and we had a lot of other things that we were trying to accomplish.
And was that ultimately live streamed?
No, I didn't. I think we just put it together, shared it with lots of families, and sending it out through the district. So
they all got to hear it, and their families got to hear it, and that is the experience of performing. That is unlike any other experience in life. So the fact that your high school musicians got to do that and you led them through it is just terrific. Really, really wonderful and admirable. Congratulations on that.
thank you.
So let's hear another one of your smooth jazz performances. How about side to side? When was this one done?
This was on the same album as A New Day, and the album itself is called A New Day. So this was recorded about the same time. And I don't play a lot of tenor, so this was kind of a different kind of piece for me, which I really enjoyed doing. But yes, this is called Side to Side.
Terrific. Here we go. Greg Chambers. Side to Side with Greg Chambers. Now, we've seen you play alto and tenor. Play any other saxes?
A little bit. Yeah, I do play soprano quite a bit too. So I actually pulled it out right here because I know that a lot of people, when they think of smooth jazz, think of Kenny G. So they might think of, there's so much more to it than that.
So, when you switch from one to the other, um, is that a tricky thing to do? Is your embouchure different? Is the just the whole sense of approaching the instrument different?
It is. I mean, obviously, the size of the mouthpiece is maybe the first recognizable difference, because
Yeah,
a tenor is like double the size of a soprano mouthpiece. It can be really tricky, especially if you're, I mean, the other thing is we play a reed instrument. So the reed is sitting for a long period of time, it's getting dry, and it might take a little bit of time to get it to warm up again and respond. Um, and I think that when I play live shows, I really do think about that as I, program which pieces are next. Am I going to have time to get
right.
readjusted to the new instrument? So
Right.
yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum, you're sitting there waiting for the big solo in pictures at an exhibition. You've got only one instrument to think about, but you've got lots of time to get nervous.
Right, absolutely.
So it's a whole different bag. Um, I'd like to listen to just a little bit of this Ned Rorem piece, Lions, that you recorded also at Aspen. And this gives us a look at another different context of Greg Chambers, the sax player. This piece takes us into a jazz ensemble, a jazz band, but with big sax solo. Tell us a little bit about this piece, and let's hear a little bit of Lions, a Dream.
Absolutely. So from what I remember about the piece was it was meant to be very programmatic, and that, like, there you can kind of picture something happening throughout the piece, right? And that the experience is supposed to be you're walking down a hallway and there's a jazz combo practicing in a room, right? And a lot of our excerpts, it's interesting, and I'm sure you're very aware of this, Mitch. They're classical in a sense, but a lot of times, you have to kind of cross over anyways. Like Gershwin, anytime you play in a section.
Right.
So this one kind of is a fusion of kind of both styles in a way.
So let's hear that. This is the jazz ensemble piece that's part of Lions, a Dream by Ned Rorem, and this is from the Aspen Music Festival.
That's right. Right. Let's take a listen.
fascinating piece. Very experiential. You are transported into all kinds of different worlds. And so as a sax player there, you are playing, even in a classical ensemble, you are sort of playing in a lounge sax jazz style while all this other stuff is going on. That must have been a very interesting piece to perform.
It certainly was, absolutely.
So we're going to conclude this very interesting program, and we're so grateful to you, Greg, for spending this time with us by listening to one more of your just terrific smooth jazz recordings, this one called So Into You. And let's hear that, and we'll sign off after that. Here's Greg Chambers and So Into You. so into you, as I'm sure all of our listeners and participants today are. Greg Chambers, thank you so much. Greg Chambers, smooth jazz recording star, classical jazz performer, teacher, band conductor, high school music pedagogue, man who wears many musical hats, all of them beautifully well. Thank you so much, Greg, for being with us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you in real time one of these days. We're hoping with vaccinations and other progress that we'll get together in real time pretty soon.
Absolutely, would love to make music again too.
You bet. Thank you, Greg. Take care, and thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Want more content like this from Peninsula Symphony? Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the red subscribe button below and tap the alarm bell icon to get notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Thanks for watching.